Where were you on September 11th when the towers fell? It used to be where were you when Kennedy got shot for the previous generation. People always remember where they were and what they were doing on landmark days. Many adults weren't even alive on September 11th. A lot of people in their 30s were too young to remember. It happened on a school day when the majority of people under the age of 18 in 2001 were in school in a time before cell phones. They probably heard the news from a teacher who had heard it from an administrator who was watching cable TV in the break room. I was 21 years old at the time. I had a large apartment in downtown San Antonio, and I worked full-time at a telemarketing company where I was the top salesman. I had worked almost a year straight, 48 hours a week, without being late or missing a day of work. On this particular Monday, however, I was calling in. A very nice secretary who I was actually friends with answered the phone. I had planned on telling her that I wasn't going to come in until noon, and I had been tossing and turning the night before. I had some friends over, and we were up all night snorting rails. My secretary friend at that telemarketing job told me the boss was actually sending everybody home. This caught me off guard, and I lost my breath because I knew the fat and greedy boss, Robert Delgado, wouldn't ever be sending anybody home even if their house was on fire. I immediately knew something was up. "What happened?" I asked, surprisingly. "You didn't hear?" she said. "No," I told her. "Turn on the news right now." So I turned on the news, hung up the phone, and minutes later I watched live with millions of other Americans as the second plane hit another tower and the second building. I only had a few minute windows in between the first plane hitting and the second plane hitting to determine whether the first plane was an accident or whether it was a terrorist attack, just like everybody else. During the time I was letting my twin brother stay with me, and even though he didn't pay rent, but he had been heartbroken by a promiscuous young woman, and I was letting him sleep in my spare bedroom and work on his artwork. The first thing I did is went and told him. I sold weed at the time, and I had a large downtown apartment. My apartment was the official hangout spot for me and my friends. My main friend was John Hersey. John worked at the telemarketing office too. He didn't sell nearly as much as I did, and he kind of looked up to me. He was a few years younger than me. Most of the people who hung out at my place were John's friends. I guess that's why I don't remember all their names. There was the skinny Asian kid, Chris. I let him stay there for a little while. He had a brother that was a lawyer. I hung out with the lawyer a couple of times. I remember he spent a year at Iowa before coming to San Antonio. There was another female that I actually messed around with, and I don't remember her name. David Longoria was actually a friend of mine, a married friend, and he'd usually come over just to get out of the house from his wife. By early evening, everyone was sitting around the big TV in my living room, solemnly discussing what happened earlier in the day. I remember walking to the corner store, and the usual grumpy clerk was surprisingly friendly. It was one of the only times she didn't call me güero. It was rare to have so many people in my apartment and us not doing drugs. I guess it was a Tuesday night, and some of us were doing it the night before. It was the first day of work I missed, and even though I didn't feel responsible, I felt it was a really strange coincidence, especially since I had done more cocaine the previous night than I ever had before in my life. Personally, I would be in a somber mood regardless, but the day having the plane struck the tower, everybody was feeling what I was feeling. And the days after, people were talking weird like Code Red and Code Orange, and the powers that be started taking away citizens' rights immediately. Later that year, while delivering newspapers with my friend Lisa, I remember reading a copy of the New York Times, and they had pictures of Saddam's bunker with weapons of mass destruction. Turned out to be false. Have a great day, guys.